أصحاب المعالي، أصحاب السعادة، السيدات والسادة الحضور، وكل من يحضر هذا العرض عبر اللايف ستريمينج أو العرض الحي على كافة منصات مواقع التواصل الاجتماعي. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
Blessings on you and welcome you in the forum of the private sector for the ISDB group. On the third day, let us start to mention that we have interpretation in the three languages, namely Arabic, French, and English. And you can use the equipment for the interpretation that you will find on your seats. We wish to welcome you here in this private sector forum for the ISDB group organized by the private sector affiliated to the ISDB. This is the Islamic Institution for Investment, and ISIC, the Islamic ICD for the development of the private and the International Institution for ITFC. And in support of the Businessman Forum, IGSB IQRA, and the local participants, government representations, the private sector, and the Kingdom of Arabs of Saudi Arabia and all the member states. For the different parts of our meeting, we have a presentation of documents to Dacha.
The Managing Director, ICC Digital Standards Initiative, for her presentation. Let's give her a round of applause, everyone.
Morning, everyone. You get the super private briefing on documents to data. I'm Pamela Mar. It is my absolute pleasure to be here at the Islamic Development Bank annual meetings in order to tell you about how to get from documents to data in global trade. And I would like to pick up on something that was discussed yesterday afternoon in the session on SMEs. Almost every speaker said that digitalization is an enabler of SME growth and empowerment. And I think that was a theme that was also repeated by others during the annual meetings. And today I would like to share with you on the how, because definitely digitalization is the key to unlocking SME growth and to expanding inclusivity in global trade. But the real question is, how do you do that? How do we make sure that we are digitalizing and getting all the gains that are promised? So that's why this presentation is documents to data, because today global trade is run by documents, and we want to get to the place where we can actually run by data. So that's the roadmap to digital trade. So basically, the Digital Standards Initiative was set up in order to facilitate the expansion of global trade via digitalization. We would like to create the digital trade ecosystem that is harmonized and interoperable, and where inclusion and simplicity are a matter of fact. So DSI was set up by the International Chamber of Commerce, which is based in Paris, and we were set up in Singapore because we are supported by the Asian Development Bank and the Singapore government. And also on my board is the WTO, the World Trade Organization, and the World Customs Organization. We have a roadmap to digital trade, which incorporates standards, i.e. the trade standards which function across the supply chain, digital trust, which sets the rules and the regulations for how we agree on trusted sharing of data. How do you know that the data which is given to you is actually true? And how do you know the person who gave it to you is actually the right party? So that's digital trust. The third element is legal reform. Today, a lot of the laws all around the world were made pre-digital age. So electronic records, electronic signatures, sometimes aren't fully protected. So we are leading a global advocacy campaign in order to legitimize the use of electronic records everywhere. And I'm so pleased, this is my first visit to Saudi Arabia, and I'm so pleased to see that actually the digitalization and the digital mindset has really taken root here for finance especially. The goal is, let's expand that to incorporate trade, international trade as well. And then the final building block is capacity building. So we work across the public and private sector. I'm really pleased that the Islamic Development Bank and the ITFC are members of our Legal Reform Advisory Board with a lot of multilateral development banks, basically to push forward the innovation frontier for digital trade. We also work on standards with a lot of the industry associations which assume responsibility for different parts of the supply chain like freight forwarding, shipping, logistics, finance, and so on. So we've recently come out, last week, actually we launched this, and you'll see it on some of the seats in the front. This is the complete end-to-end framework for digitalizing the global supply chain. We basically looked across the entire supply chain at the 40 key trade documents, and we broke those down, and we analyzed the data which is in those documents in order to create alignment. Because you can't share data unless you are actually using data in the same way, from taxonomy, from technical makeup. So we actually created the first alignment across data in the supply chain. And basically, every supply chain, regardless of whether it's which sector or which country, every supply chain is made up of key trade documents, which basically concretize the transactions which are taking place across the entire supply chain, from like raw material supplier to distributor to manufacturer to logistics and so on. So these key trade documents are actually the connectors of the global supply chain, and if you want to digitalize global trade, you need to work on the key trade documents. So that's why we started. So this is just a simple map which shows you at every stage of the supply chain which document are you talking about. And our goal is to remove all of the paper documents, turn those into data, and allow data sharing across the entire chain. So these are the 36 key trade documents. We basically discovered that 21 are already digitalized, harmonized, and ready to be plugged and played from a data perspective. So our message here is adopt, full speed. Every business should be looking at these 21 documents in order to see how can I digitalize faster. If you look at the recommended standards in this booklet, it will tell you which standard to use, which document to use, and what are the core data elements. We put this entire thing, so this is just an extract. It just contains several pages, like there's no page 2, there's no page 4. You can get the whole report on our website, or you can navigate to this digitalizedtrade.org website, which contains all of the information on the documents, who shares across those documents, because every key trade document goes to multiple parties. Every piece of data in the supply chain, some go to one party, some go to two, some go to multiple parties. So you can see 36 documents, 190 core data elements, about 50 of those are shared multiple times. Our goal is to secure truth for those 50 items, secure sharing of those 50 items, and then allow us to transact much more fluidly. And the end game is actually to facilitate clearance based on true data. So right now, it takes maybe a week for a ship to sail from Jakarta to Singapore, but it takes a few days to sail from Jakarta to Singapore, but it takes a week to clear that ship because of all the checking and so on. We want to reduce this to 24 hours. So the key to speeding up global trade and making it cheaper and faster is data. Trust your data. We are also working on legal reform, and the focus is the model law on electronic transferable records. And this is a model law which was developed by the UN Commission on International Trade Law. And the UNCITRAL, for those of you who don't know, is the UN body which is basically creating model laws which advance electronic commerce, amongst other things. The model law on electronic transferable records is a core part of legal reform and alignment, which will allow every country to get into digital trade and also protect the businesses which are digitalizing their supply chain and beginning to transact in data. If you navigate onto this website, you will also find a map of every country and where they stand on aligning to the model law. It's not a simple process. You can't just pass a law and hope you're done. But actually, because electronic records function across the entire government, trade, customs, finance, internal revenues, tax, and so on, you really need to build capacity. So we're working directly with governments to build that capacity, build that roadmap to allow every government to get into digital trade. So our vision is, in a few years, digitalizing 70 to 80% of global trade by working on standards, trust, legal reform, and capacity building. For supply chains, what does this mean? Traceability, speed, efficiency, and full-time visibility of where your shipment is at any given time. The only way to do that is to digitalize. Key trade documents and the data embedded within them are also the key to accurate carbon accounting within the supply chain. And if you know anything about ESG, half of our global emissions reduction has to take place in global supply chains. So if we don't master that, using accurate data and driving action in the material points of the supply chain, we won't get to net zero. So we need to digitalize, get our hands on the data, and then drive action. For governments, digitalizing global trade is also the key to having efficiency at the border, having traceability, and having efficiency in terms of the collection of any customs duties and payments, and really facilitating all of those payments digitally. Now, I know Saudi Arabia already has, the Zatco platform for digitalizing customs duties, but it's important not just to have that in your border, but actually when you transact with other countries. So it's about cleaning your own house, digitalizing your own house, and then supporting other countries as they go through the same process. Lastly, to come back to the SMEs, clarity on standards and interoperability of data are the key to unlocking SME growth. And that's because for an SME, it doesn't make sense to cut your data so many different ways to meet compliance regulations, to meet the regulations and data formats of different trade platforms. SMEs, they probably have one person doing finance, admin, HR, and IT. So the more you can simplify and drive interoperability and alignment of data, the better that SMEs will be able to compete. Today, most SMEs don't trade abroad. I think the figure is something like 10% or 20%. And of those, the majority of SMEs that do trade abroad only get to one other country because they can't navigate the opacity of border regulations, the multiple formats, the multiple compliance standards that are required to navigate different borders. Our goal, simplify all of that, make all data interoperable, harmonize and align the taxonomy and technical makeup so that anyone can trade anywhere. That's the vision. So I would encourage you to check out this report and check out some of the other reports which are online. You can access all of them through our website to look at what can you gain from digital trade. And it's really, from a business perspective, the case is pretty hard to beat because it's speed, it's efficiency, and it's less cost at the border. We have campaigns to focus on EBLs and digital finance and payments, and we really encourage you to take a look at all of these. Lastly, if you're still getting started in digital trade, and you don't know all the jargon, and I know I've used a lot of jargon in this talk already, but if you're just getting started, I'd really encourage you to go online and just start learning, because it's a new frontier for all of us. And this certificate in digital trade strategy is one way to get you on board. And I know that, over 50 countries have taken this, and it's basically an all-in-one lesson. It's 5 hours, study at your own speed, and get on the road to digital trade. So I really want to thank you for showing up at 9 a.m. And for listening to our vision for going from documents to data. If you have any questions, I'll be around this morning. So thank you very much, and and have a great rest of your day at the Private Sector Forum.
Thank you so much, Ms. Pamela, for sharing your extensive knowledge about digitizing data in the world of trade. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to have a very short break in preparation for our upcoming talk, so we will reconvene again in 10 minutes. Thank you.